So, so today we'll start on the new topic, that is the fragments. So basically, what are the fragments? So fragments are nothing but it's just like a views, but it's a little bit different from the views. So if in a generic term, if I want to say what are the fragments, so fragments are nothing but it's are the lightweight components, UI components. So why they are said as a lightweight UI parts? Because suppose if we build one view in the SAP UI5 application, and after that, once the view is developed, so view consists of many controls like buttons, everything, button, label, text, any control we declare inside the content of view, that are nothing but controls. But in same manner, we can also declare the controls inside the fragments. So but the thing is that fragments are not part of view. When you declare it inside the view, then only it would be rendered inside the view, but till then that are not a part of view. So same like view, there are also for the view, for each view we also know that there are the controller associated with that view. But in case of fragments, there are no in case of fragments, a fragment don't have their own controllers, so that is one reason. So wherever the fragments are called, suppose if I'm using the main page dot view dot xml file, okay, and again, for the main page view.xml file, there is a controller associated with it, right? Main page dot controller.js file. So what if I want to call the fragment? So what I will do, in on button click, I'll simply declare one function inside the controller file, and in that function I will load the fragment file. Okay, once I wrote the code for the loading the fragment, then what will happen, the fragment will be loaded in that view. So what fragment will do, the fragment will use the controller of that main page dot controller. Why? Because that is the place where fragment is initiated, and so use so once the fragment is initiated, it can use the controller from others wherever it is called. So that's why, as compared to, why the fragments are lightweight, because whenever you declare any view, whenever you declare any control inside the fragment, so if you want to get the instance of the fragment, you will not the get instance of the fragment. In that case, you will get the control of a fragment. Suppose in a fragment one dialog is declared, okay, so that dialog is a part of a fragment. Okay, so dialogues are nothing but that are a special kind of a the controls which are not part of view. It always appear on the top of view content. So that's why the for the dialogues specially we use the fragments, because that are not included in the view, that always displayed on the top of view. So that's why in case of dialogues, we normally use the fragments. But what will happen when I declare any dialogue inside the fragment, and if I want to call the dialogue in the main page.controller.js, for example, okay, so what will happen in that case, when you load the fragment file inside that controller, so what will happen, you will not get the fragments id, you will get the id of dialog. Okay, that is why the fragments are lightweight, because the instance of fragments are not created in the sense only the dialog, it always return the whatever is declared inside the fragment. Okay, so same like views, we do have the properties, we do have some the controllers for it, for the view. But in case of fragment, the fragment don't have their own properties and all that kind of thing. So that's why they are a lightweight UI parts. You just need to declare the fragment, and automatically that fragment is included in the view. Okay, that is the case with a fragment. And why they are reused? Because suppose I have the 10 pages, okay, 10 view files already created for my application, and there is some part of code. Suppose there is one message box. Oh, okay, so one message box, it is there in the fragment, and that message box I have to call in multiple views. Okay, same message box I have to call in multiple views. So instead of writing that message box 10 times in different views, we can simply declare that message box in one single fragment.xml file. Okay. So once I declare the fragment in XML file, so what will happen? I just need to load the fragment inside that particular view. So what will happen? Automatically that file will be called and that message box will be opened. Okay, so that's why we use the fragment. Is the if I want to use the code multiple times instead of declaring multiple times, so in that case I will be using the fragments. So fragment is a piece of code that can be reused multiple times. Okay. So how to initiate the fragments? So normally so fragments are loaded, that are all the assets of fragments are included in the library sap.ui.core.fragment. So in sap.ui.core, it is a namespace, or you can call it as it is a class where fragments all assets are included, okay, are present in that library. So there are typically three types of fragments, like XML fragment, HTML fragment, and JS fragments. But normally SAP recommends to use the XML fragment. Why? Because XML fragments are it's a better, it's a more means if I want to understand the fragment, so in case of XML it is very good. So it is for the readability purpose, the fragments, XML fragments are considered in case of HTML and JS. Okay, so that's why we prefer the XML fragments in order to build. Yes, Sanjeev, you can ask me the questions now.
Okay. No, what is the you? I got it to your point. The fragment will be used when there is a reusable concept. That means same thing will be suppose need to be designed for all the pages. Then you will use the fragment at that time.
Right, right, right,
Uh, Okay. Suppose a common button will be used for all, like then it will be used in the fragment.
right,
We will
right,
use that fragment.
right.
Okay.
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 So normally,
Mm.
Sanjeev, so dialog, you know, right? A pop-up box.
Yeah, pop-up box,
So
modal
pop-up
box,
box,
modal box.
yes, that pop-up box is it's not a part of any view. Okay, it always appears on the top of you, right?
Yeah.
Right. So what
Suppose
will happen whenever any pop-up is displayed? The background of the view is what will happen? It will be dark, and one pop-up will be appear on the top. So that are never included in the view, that are always come on the top of view. So in that case also the fragments are very useful. So normally most of the time, 90% of time, we will be using this fragment only for the dialog boxes in our code.
okay.
Okay,
So
so
that means the modal boxes or yes or no, like this. There is a box and there is a button yes or no.
right, right,
Like
right, right. So
okay.
suppose on simple case, you get a requirement that you need to
Hmm.
display. There is a more button, okay, on top of anywhere. There is a more button, and what
Hmm.
you need to do? There is no space at all, right? So the space
Hmm.
is not there on the view, and you cannot display the details on the view. So that was one case. So what you will do? You will open one fragment. Okay, when you click on the button, what it will do, it will open the fragment, and inside that dialog box you will display all the details. Okay, so what, when click on more button, automatically the details will be displayed, and again user can close that fragment, right? Close that dialog
Hmm.
box.
Hmm.
So instead of giving extra space on the view to display the details, it's better, right? We can display the details inside the dialog box. So that
Okay.
is one kind of thing. So normally, if you want to understand this fragment in simple terms, it will be maximally, it will be used when you want to display any kind of pop-up or any kind of a dialog box, okay, or any kind of a reusability type of concept. So for that type of thing, you will be always be using the fragments.
Okay.
Okay, so should I move? Should I proceed
Yeah.
further?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's understand the fragments by implementing in UI5 application. Okay. So what we will do, we will create one application from scratch for the fragments, and we'll try to implement how the fragment works in UI5 application. So let's create a project from template. So I will select the SAP Fiori Freestyle project and click on start. I'll, I'll select the option as a Cloud Foundry, and by default I will keep this option as a SAP UFI application. After that I'll click on next. Okay, so this is the fragment. So I'll write a fragment demo next. I'll keep the default option as it is. I'll click on next. So namespace for my application I'll give as a fragment. After that module name is fragment module. Rest I'll keep it as a default option. After that I'll give the name to my view, that is the main page. Okay, I don't want to add any service, so I'll directly click on next. So once I'm done with that, I'll simply open in new workspace. Okay, so our project is created. So what we will do, I'll just expand this fragment module, so in which I have to write the code. I'll expand the web app folder. Okay, so what we will do, so as an SAP practice, every time whenever if I want to create any fragment file, so always for that I will create a new folder. So that folder name must be like a fragment. So any new user, if he comes, any new developer, so he can easily understand that I've created some fragments and all the fragments are stored inside the fragment folder. So what I'll do, small case, I'll create one fragments folder. Okay, so once I click on OK, automatically the fragment folder is created. So after that, if I want to create any fragment file, I'll add all those files inside the fragment folder. So I'll right click on the fragment, new file. So remember one thing, so the fragment files are always created with .fragment .xml. So normally in this example we will be looking at the XML type of fragment. Okay, so there are three types of fragments: XML fragment, HTML fragment, and JS fragment. But as an SAP recommendation, we will always be using the XML fragment. So it's because it's better to implement. It can be easily readable and it can be easily understandable. As a purpose of understanding, we always use the XML fragments. Okay. So what we will do, we will create one XML fragment. So suppose I'll give the name of fragment as a dialog fragment. Okay, dialog fragment dot, the extension would be fragment in small case dot xml. Okay, so so this is our file name, a generic dot fragment dot xml would be the extension for the fragment file. So type of our fragment is xml. Okay, so once I enter the name, I can simply click on OK. So our fragment file will be created. So next thing, what I have to do, I have to declare some of the controls inside the fragments. So generally the fragments are nothing but that are not a part of view, but they can behave as a view. But only the thing is with the fragment that it don't have their own controllers. Okay. So what we will do, we will declare some controls inside the fragment. So for that, first, so basically where the fragment are stored, so basically the fragment, all the properties, or wherever, everything, the fragment related information is stored in the library sap.ui.core. Okay, so that is the library where fragments assets are located. So for that, what I have to do, if I want to declare any tags, any related the tags, XML tags, so for that I have to make sure that I would be using the core library. Okay, so core is nothing but where the fragments are stored. So for that, once what I'll do, I'll create the core. So core is a namespace, the alias name which I've given for my sap.ui.core. So we'll see in a minute how I declare the core library. So so if I want to declare any controls inside the fragment, so that controls are always um, displayed, or that can be always put inside the fragment definition. Okay, so fragment definition, it is a place where we will store our all the controls, or will declare. So fragment definition. Okay, so after fragment definition, what I'll do, I'll declare the XML namespace, that is for core, because core is a place sap.ui.core. Okay, so what is this core? So core is nothing but it is a namespace, alias name for this library. Okay, and this is a place where a fragment definition or the fragments are stored, that are available inside this inside this library. So that's why I've used the core. Okay, after that, I'll declare one more namespace, that is sap.m, because sap.m is mostly used, or I can say or mostly required, a required kind of the namespace in our application. So because our dialogues, anything, the button, everything are stored in sap.m library, so that's why I'll keep it as a default. So for default, I don't have to give any alias name. Okay, I can simply write equal to sap.m. That's it. So close this. So same, I'll declare the closing tag for the fragment definition. Okay, so my fragment definition is done. So next thing, what I have to do, I have to declare the dialog, right? So mostly the fragments are used for the dialogues. So what we will do, we'll declare one dialog. Okay, so dialog is a control. So basically the dialogues are available inside the sap.m library. Okay, so when I hover on it, I can see it's stored in the library. All the assets related to dialogues are present inside the sap.m. So that's why sap.m, it is the class for the dialog. Okay, so dialog, so I don't have to give any alias name for this dialog tag, because it's a default I have kept. So next thing, I'll close the dialog tag. After that, dialog having the content. So inside the content, I can declare any controls I want. If I want, suppose for the dialog, simply I want to display one message. So I'll write text. So text is a control, and the small text is nothing but it is a property for the text control. Okay, what I'll do, dialog is opened. So this is the generic message I'll display. Okay, I'll close the text control. After that, I'll give the ID to dialog. So because we need to open the dialog, right? It cannot be simply opened. So in order to open, we have to manually use this dialog's ID, so that we should be able to open the dialog. Okay, And same, we also need one button to close the dialog. Okay, we don't want that dialog to be opened as it is. So if I want to close any dialog, so the button has to be there for dialog so that we can close the dialog. Okay, we'll give the dialog id as a dialog id. Okay, so in footer, so there is an aggregation for the dialog as end button. Okay, inside the end button, whatever the button, normally it takes the control as a button. So I'll specially declaring this button for closing the dialog. So for that I'll give the text as a close, and I'll add the press event on close dialog. Okay, so now what I've done, I've simply declared one dialog control inside the fragment definition. So if I want to create a fragment file, so for that this is the syntax I have to follow. Okay, so I have to declare the fragment definition, and inside that I have to declare the dialog. So dialog is nothing but it is a control which is present inside the fragment definition. Okay, so now next thing what I have to do, I have to call this fragment, right? So wherever the fragment is called, so fragment will use the control of that particular view. Okay, so suppose by default our main page is created, right? At the time of the project creation, we have created this main page dot view dot xml xml view file at the time of project creation. So what I have to do, I have to call this fragment inside this view. So for that, when I open this main page.xml file, so let me explain you one thing. So I can see there is one controller name. Okay, so this is a property for the view. So what I've done, I have referred one controller file for this view file. Okay, so controller file is main page. So this is the controller file for our main page.view.xml. So that is main page.controller.js. But for same, for the dialog, there is no controller file. Okay, so that's why the controller, so this property controller name property is missing for the fragment definition, because fragment don't have their own controllers. It shares the controller wherever it is called or wherever it is invoked. Okay, so we are invoking this dialog where we are invoking this fragment inside the main page.view.xml file. So if I want to invoke this fragment inside this main page.view.xml file, so for that I need one button. So what I'll do, I'll declare one footer. Okay, so I'll declare one button inside the footer, button text equal to I'll simply give the text I'll simply declare the text as a open for this button, and I'll declare one more press event. Okay, so I'll add the function as, sorry, I cannot simply add the button as it is. For that I'll need one container. So I'll use simply the bar control. Okay, inside the bar I'll write content right. So I'll declare this button exactly in a footer at the right hand side. So that's why I've used the content right. Okay, so next thing uh, I have to define one press event for this a button. So on open dialog. Okay, so this is the function name. So I'll open the main page.controller.js file. Okay, so this is the function name. This is the function we would call when we click on the open. Okay, so before we open, let me try to open this file. So we'll give the title as it's a fragment. So now let me run this file, so we can check first whether our button is visible or not in the footer. So if I want to run this application, I have to go to the run configuration tab. I have to click this plus icon. So this is our project name, fragment demo. Okay, I'll select the index.html, whatever you can select latest, or for as of now I'll selecting the 1.71 because this is the version where long-term maintenance is already provided. So I'll directly click on enter. So once I'm done with this, so I can see the configuration is created for this fragment project. So I'll run this file. So I'll just wait for some couple of seconds till our local host server is ready. Okay, so I'll open in new tab. Okay, so now what I can see in the footer, I can see one open button which we have defined for opening the fragment file. Okay, in this view. So this is our view file, fragment demo. So let's go back and write some code, write some logic in the main page.control.file, so that we can open, so that we should be able to open the fragment file. Yes, Sanjeev, any questions in this till now? You want to ask anything in this?
Got it, but in real time, yeah, but any example where we can this type of fragment will be used actually?
As of now, we'll not see the example. We'll simply first see how the fragment works. Okay, normally we'll try to open and we'll try to close it. Okay, so this is a
Okay.
generic example we would see as of now today. But in next coming session, when we are going to use the dialogues, sorry, the models
Mm.
and all, so in that I'll explain you in detail. Okay, the fragments
Okay.
means
Okay.
not detail, then you can see the real example of fragment where it can be used.
Mm.
But as
Like
of now,
next
just
page.
understand it, how the fragments are
Uh,
declared and how they are opened.
so like the next page, it is always in the page. At that time, we can use it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. In coming section, when I want to explain the models and dialogues, anything, the JSON model and all,
Okay.
OData service and all, so in that I'll explain you that where it is helpful for us, the
Mm.
fragments and
Mm.
all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, then so I'll proceed with the coding part. So what I'll do, so we have defined the fragment, okay, in the fragment.xml file. So next thing I have to do, I have to open this dialog. Okay, so I have to open this fragment. So for that, what I have to do, I have to just go back to the main page.controller.js file. So first thing we need is view. Okay, what we'll do, we'll create one o view, so in a local variable, and after that this dot get view. So what is this dot get view? So this means nothing but it is the current instance of our page. So our current page is main page dot view dot xml. Okay, or maybe it's a main page. Okay, so this will always refer to main page as of now. So after that get view, so what I want to get, this dot get view. So get view means it will return the view associated with this view. So what is our view? Main page in this case. Okay, so what we will do, this dot get view, so this particular line of statement, it will store the view inside the o view. Okay, so inside this local variable o view, the our view is available, so that if I want to access anything inside of view, that can be accessible with this help, with this help of local variable OView. Okay, because why? We have stored this dot get view. So get view method will return all the methods, anything, the controls associated with that view inside this OView dot inside this OView local variable. Okay, after that I'll write if condition. I'll write if conditional statement, and what I'll say, if not, so simply first I'll check if not this ID. Suppose this dialogs ID it's not available inside the view. So what I'll do, i'll I'll first load the fragment.xml file. Okay, once I load the fragment.xml file, automatically this dialog is available inside the main page.view.xml file. Okay, till then it is not available. That's why what we will do, we will first check the condition. If that ID is not available, then only we will load this fragment. So once we load the fragment, till our application is completely closed, that dialog is available. Okay, so you don't have to destroy the dialog. That dialog is throughout, means that dialog is available till your application is running. Okay, once you close the dialog, automatically the dialog would be destroyed. Okay, after that the dialog is not available. So what we'll do, first I'll check the condition. If that ID is not available, if that dialog's ID is not available, first I'll copy the ID. So if I want to get the ID of a dialog, so what I'll do, I'll simply write this dot by ID. Okay, so as the dialog is a not part of our view, so that's why we haven't used the get view. So this dot by ID. So what I'll check, first I'll check whether this ID is available or not, whether this dialog ID is available or not. Why? Because we need the dialog is not part of view, and fragment is also not part of view, and it is not loaded yet. Okay, so that's why this ID is not available. So if I simply remove this not, and simply if I'm checking this condition, then I will get an error that because this ID itself it's not available, it's completely undefined. Okay, so what I'll do, if this dialogs ID is not available, then only I will perform operation. Okay, I will write some statements. If this dialog ID is not available, then only this particular line of code will get executed. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll write. So before I write anything, first thing I'll load some module name, some module file, so that we so that I can perform the rest of the operation. So first I think the fragment. Okay, first I need the fragment. So fragments are stored in which library? In sap.ui.core, right? So I'll write sap/ui/ sorry core slash a fragment. Okay, so fragments are stored inside this library sap/ui/core. So if I want to find this a library, so what I'll do, let me hide them. Okay, what I'll do, so I'll open the SDK, a development toolkit of SAPUI5, and I'll simply search for the fragment. It will take, okay, my I'll search for the fragment. Okay, then what I can see, it's stored inside the namespace sap.ui.core.fragment. Okay, when I open the fragment, okay, so this is the generic class. So I have to include this module name inside the controller file, then only I can be able to use this fragment. Okay, so once this module name is available inside the controller file, then I can simply call the fragments methods. Okay, so one of the method I have to call is load method. Okay, so load is a method for the fragment. So what it does, simply it loads and instantiate a fragment. Okay, so if I want to load any fragment file, I'll simply use the method dot load. So what I'll do, I'll simply go back. So I've declared the module name, that is the fragment, and after that I'll pass the name to this function. Okay, factory function. And after that, so this fragment is now available with this name inside the whole page. Okay, it is available throughout the main page. So what I'll do, so I'll write the fragment dot load. Okay, so this is the method. Using this method, I will simply load the fragment .xml file inside this main page .controller.js. So this fragment takes the object. So first object I'll write, so inside the object I'll write id. Okay, so id is the first property it takes. So what is id? So every time a fragment you load, that fragment we need to give any id to this fragment. Why? Because if I don't give any id to this fragment, automatically the automatically at runtime the SAPUI5 assigns the id to this fragment. Okay, at a runtime. But in order to avoid the duplicate id issue, what we will do, we will get the id of view, and after that, that id, so view id, it by default it would be prefixed with fragment id. Okay, so we are not creating any id for the fragment. Automatically the fragment id would be prefixed with this view id. So that, suppose this fragment is reusable, right? So this fragment we have used for this main page.controller.js. Suppose for this main page I have used the this fragment, but same fragment if I'm using for the second page. Okay, so another page is there, but that page is also available inside the same project. Okay, so what if I call the same fragment again in that view? So what will happen? I'll get an issue of duplicate id. Because why? Because the same fragment will be used for the second view, for the second page, and that id and this id, it would be match. And what id concept says, the id must be unique throughout the application. Okay, so in order to achieve this, so what we will do, we will specify the views id, so that this view id is prefixed with the fragment id. Okay, so what will happen, so we will get to know that this fragment is only related to this main page.view.xml. But in case of second page, so what I'll do, I will pass the id of second page to that fragment, so that second page id would be prefixed with the fragment. So every time you load the fragment, that fragment would be having the unique IDs. So that can avoid the duplicate kind of issues in the future. Okay. So I want to pass the ID of view. So for that, I already have the OView, right? So I've already taken the OView dot get ID. So get ID, it is a method which is available for the view. So it will return the ID which is associated with this view. Okay. After that, I'll give the comma. I'll declare the second property as a controller. Sorry, not controller. I'll name. So name is a property which takes the path of fragment. Okay, so it takes the path of fragment where our fragment file is stored. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll close this. So I'll just go back to our project structure. So where is our file stored? It is stored inside the fragments folder. So that is dialog fragment.fragment.xml. Okay, so if I want to load this name, so if I want to declare the name of the fragment, so fragment, I have to copy the path, right? So fragment is nothing but this is our namespace name. After that, fragment module. So module name is fragment module, and inside that there is a controller. So controller, it is the folder, right? And inside that there is a main page. So same like we'll copy this. Instead of controller, I'll simply use the fragment folder name. Okay, so this is our fragment folder name. So fragments, so this is our generic path because this is our namespace name, and fragment module because inside the fragment module our web app is there, and inside the web app I want to target with fragments. So I don't have to specify the web app, so automatically it will detect the folders. Okay, so fragment module, and fragment, it is a folder name. It is a folder where our fragment file is stored. So next, instead of main page, I'll simply write the name of file. So name of file is dialog fragment. Okay, so I don't have to specify dot fragment dot xml. Okay, so that is not required. Okay, so this extension dot fragment dot xml is not required in case of name. Okay, so now our load property is done. Next thing, what I have to do after load, so whatever, once I load the fragment, then I have to, whatever I have loaded the file, so I have to load the content. Okay, so in the response, I just want the response from this loaded file. What response I want? In the response, I will always get the dialog, because dialog, it is the one control which I have defined in the fragment definition. So it, in the sense, it will return the dialog. Okay, so I'll just go back, I'll write dot then. Okay, so so what is then? It normally, it is the callback function. Okay, it just like a promise. So this concept, it is like a promise concept. So promise is nothing but it is the object. Okay, so it is the object which will be evaluated if the certain condition satisfies. Okay, suppose if condition not satisfies, it automatically throws an error. If condition satisfies, then success function would be called, means the it will execute successfully. So same, when I load the fragment file, then in the response, I'll get the dialog, right? Because in the file, in the fragment file, there is a dialog. So in then I'll write the function, callback function, and after that I'll declare the function inside the file. So what response I'll get from this fragment? Dialog. Automatically, because in successful, when this will loaded successful, then only in response I will get a dialog in return. Okay, so simply I'll write o dialog. Okay, o dialog. So before I write the o dialog, first thing what I have to do, I have to add this dialog on the lifecycle methods of the view. Okay, so main page is there, main page dot view dot xml. So what I have to do, so for adding this dialog to the lifecycle methods of the view, so why we need to add the dialog to our lifecycle methods for this main page? Because I don't want that in future. Hello, hello.
Could you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I got disconnected in between 2 minutes actually.
Okay, okay. So what
Yeah.
was the last topic you want me to explain? So what?
We have that O view actually. O view get ID.
Acha, OVU dot get ID.
Yeah.
Okay. After that, for this, you're not there.
No, 2 3 minutes I have
Hmm.
disconnected.
Okay, okay,
Then
okay, okay.
okay, okay, it's
I'll
okay.
explain you, Sanjeev. Wait. So so I'll explain you that. So this OVU, you got it right. What is OVU?
Mm, not exactly.
Okay. So this, you got it right. What is this? This is nothing but this page instance. Okay. It will always point out the point out to this current page. Okay. So in our case, main page is the current page. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is this get view method? Get view method is nothing but it will return the view associated with this page. Okay. So main page is there, right? So main page is nothing but it is a view for us. So whatever the content content is present inside the main page, it will return the reference as a in a get view method.
Okay.
Okay, so in oview, so oview is a local variable where we have stored the instance of our main page. So anything, any information I want to if I want from this main page, so I can easily access through this oview. Okay,
Okay.
so this is clear, right? This line of code.
Mm-hmm.
So next what I have to do, so I've written one if conditional statement. Okay, and inside the view, inside the if conditional statement, there is a not this dot by id. So why I've used this not operator, because what I'm saying, initially this dialog is not available inside the view, because I've already told you, right, this dialog initially it is not part of view. Okay, once I load this fragment definition file, then only this dialog's id would be available inside the main page. Otherwise till then it is not available. Okay, got it?
Okay.
So that's why what I've done, if I want to get any id for the control from the control, so this is the generic syntax, right? This dot by id, or maybe you can also write this dot get view dot by id. But dialog is not associated with the view, it always appears on the top of view. That's why we haven't used anything get view. Okay, this dot by id simply, so it will return this dot by id dialog id. So I'll first check if this dialog id is not available in the at the initial step, then what I have to do, I have to load this fragment file. Okay, so for that I have to load this fragment file. But next time again, when I click on this function, okay, when I click on this open button, which we have already declared in this, right? This is our
Okay.
sorry, this is our button. So we call this function, right? So next time again, if I click on that button, so next time what will happen, so we have already loaded this fragment, right? Again next time there is no need to load it again. Okay, Sanjeev, should I continue or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
okay? Okay, so what will happen, so initially means this fragment. Okay, so this fragment, initially we'll load this fragment, but next time there is no necessity to load this fragment again and again. Once it's available, then it is not required to load it again. Okay, so next time what we'll do, initially what will happen, that's why we have added this condition not this dot by id. If this dialog is not available, then only we'll load this. But next time if I again click on that button, so next time what will happen, again it will check. So it will first check whether this id is available or not. But next time what will happen, it will get this id. Okay, this dialog id is available inside the view, so this condition will be it will not satisfy, it will go in else part. But we'll see else part in a minute. So before that we'll check this load. Okay, so what is load? A load is a simple method used for the fragment. So for that, for this load we have the parameter, it takes the two parameters. There are many parameter many properties it takes load. So mostly we are using this id and name, and there is one more parameter we'll see in a minute. So what is id? I have passed this oview.get id. So oview is nothing but this is our page. Okay, main page, right? Oview, so it's already holding the instance of main page. So next thing, dot get id. What is get id? I simply try to get the id of main page. Okay, so once I get the id, so what it will happen, this id, the views id will be prefixed with fragments id. Okay, automatically. So we haven't specified any id for our fragment, so automatically this id would be, the views id would be prefixed with this fragment id. And SAP would automatically create the fragment ID, but before it creates the fragment ID, this views ID would be prefixed. Okay, I'll show you how the IDs would be prefixed on the runtime. Okay, so this is the ID, and after that its a second property is name. So what this name property takes, it takes the path of the file where that actual dialog file is, the fragment file is present. Okay, so fragment, it is the folder where our file is present. So that's why we have defined this path, fragment dot fragment module dot fragments dot dialog fragment. Okay, got it, Sanjeev?
Yeah, got it. But that means if we design a page and how it is used at that time, maybe it will be clear. Not I'm not getting clear actually. What my friend?
Yes, yes. Once I complete this explanation, I'll you will get to know that how the fragment opens. Okay, we can set the debugger points and we'll check. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll complete this. We want to open this. Okay, so next thing, so this load will in response, if I so once I load the fragment file, so in response I would be getting this dialog. Okay, so that's why dot then, so dot then is nothing but it's like a promise callback kind of thing. So it follows the promise concept. So it's a concept which is already available for the JavaScript. So what will happen, so in the function I've passed the parameter as a dialog, and after the dialog, so before I open the dialog, first thing I'll add this dialog to the views lifecycle method. Okay, so if I want to add this dialog to the views lifecycle, so what is lifecycle methods? So automatically when our view is loaded, so if our view is also closed, so automatically this dialog would also be destroyed. Okay, so that's why we use the we need to add the dialog to our views lifecycle method. I don't want that dialog to continuously use the resources in a background. So for that, what I'll do, I will simply add these dialog to the view cycle method. So our OView is already present. OView dot add dependent. So add dependent, dependent. It is a method. So this method will, what will do, will add this O dialog onto the views lifecycle method. So this is the generic syntax to add the dialog on the view. Okay, views lifecycle method. After that, I'll open the dialog simply. Okay, so we have opened the dialog. Okay, so this is the generic syntax to open the dialog. And next thing, so initially we'll check this condition, right? But what if this condition is false? Then in else part, I would say, so this id is already available in else part. Okay, that's why it will execute this else part code, and I'll simply write open. Okay, that's it. So now our this is complete. So for as a part of we'll revise once again that oview is nothing but this variable is holding the instance of the current view. After that, in the if conditional statement, we checked whether this id is not available, then we'll load the fragment. So fragment can be loaded using the method dot load, which is available for the fragment. So in load we have passed the two properties. One is the id. First id is nothing but this is the views id we passed, and next the name. So name is a property which takes the fragment dot fragment model dot fragment dot dialog fragment. So this is the path where our fragment file is present. Okay, so next dot then, so once this load is executed, then only in response I will get dialog. Okay, it I will not get the fragment definition, I will always get the dialog. Okay, so once I get the dialog, so that's why for if I want to open the dialog, so open is a method which is associated with this dialog. And what is oview dot add dependent? So I'll add this o dialog on the views lifecycle method. Okay, so once I add the o dialog on the views lifecycle method, so our dialog can be automatically be destroyed. I don't have to manually write the code in order to destroy, in order to free up the resources for the dialog. Okay, so that can be done automatically with the help of this method, ovu.add dependent o dialog. Okay, once I open the dialog, so automatically our dialog will be opened with the help of this method dot open. So our application is already running. So let me try to refresh the app once. Okay, so this is our dialog. So I'll refresh this once. Okay, so when I click on open, automatically I can see a dialog, a pop-up box is opened. Why? Because we have defined the dialog, right? We have loaded the fragment. So in order to check how the fragments are loaded, so why I'm not able to close? Because I haven't added anything for the close event, right? I have to call the function for it. So as of now, if I want to close, I can simply click on escape button. So this would be closed. So we'll check how the fragments are loaded. I'll click right click on the inspect. I'll go to the network tab. Okay, so once I refresh, I'll refresh the file application. Then we will see whether our fragment.xml file is available or not. Okay, uh, in this network tab. So in network tabs, we can find out every file which is been included in this project. So if I want to check the fragment.xml file, so I'll write fragment. Okay, if I hit enter, okay, I cannot find any xml any fragment.xml file in this, right? So there is no fragment.xml file. So once I click on this, I'll clear this. Okay, so once I click on the open, you can see our automatically this dialog fragment.xml file is loaded, right? Till then this fragment file is not available. Okay, so that's why I'm saying once I load the fragment file, so next time there is no requirement to load this file again and again. Okay, once it is included, so next time it is not required to load load this fragment file again and again. Okay, so I'll check the what is the ID for this fragment, because we have added the views ID, right? I'll inspect this. So this is the element section where I can inspect the fragment. So this is the fragment, okay, which we have opened. So this is our, so I'll check for the main main. Okay, so I can see I've okay, so this is our main page, right? So this is the ID for our fragment, and this is our dialog ID, right? So dialog ID, it's automatically prefixed with main page ID. Okay, so we haven't done anything, we have not added anything. Automatically this the main page ID is prefixed with dialog ID. Why? Because we have passed the ID, we have passed the value to this ID property. What value we have passed? The views ID. That's why. Okay, so this is the generic. So what I have to do, I have to close the fragment, right? So next time, so let me debug the code. I'll close this. Okay, so I'll inspect again. So what I'll do, we can will debug the code to check how the code works. Okay, I'll open the controller folder. So this is our main page.controller. So I'll add the debugger points on line number 17, because this is our if condition. I'll also add the else part. So initially what we have done, we have loaded the fragment file. So next time, if I again want to load this file, I don't want to load this file, right? So that's why we have added this, not this dot by id. So if I again click on this open, so what will happen? So if I hover on it, if I select this line of code only from this dot by id to this dot dialog id, when I hover on it, I can see automatically this controller is it's already available, this dialog id. That's why what will happen, it will directly execute the else part. Okay, it will not load the fragment because we have already loaded the fragment, and whatever available inside the fragment, it's already available on the view. So that's why that the second time load of the fragment is not required. Okay, so next time, what is this dot byte o dialog id? So this is the id of our dialog. When I copy this, actually I'll clear this console. If I paste the dialog id dot, so if I want to open the dialog, so open is a method which is available for the dialog. Okay, so I can find out open is a method. So it is a method. When I click on the open, automatically I can see a dialog is opened. Okay, but our debugger is all available. So I'll remove this debugger, I'll resume, and I'll close this debugger. Okay, so this is how the dialog performs. The fragment works in SAPUI5. Okay, so what if I want to close this? So I think I've already added the method for that button. So on close dialog, so this is the function which I have to call on the button. I'll go back, give the comma. So this is the function. So how if I want to close the dialog? So for close also there is a method for the dialog, that is close. That's it. Instead of open, I'll write close. Okay, so this dot by id dialog id. So this dot by id dialog id is nothing but it is the dialog, actual dialog, and dot using the close method we will close the dialog. Okay, so once I go back, what I'll do, I'll refresh this once. Okay, so once I open this, okay, so next thing, what if I want to close this? So when I close this, nothing is happening. Why? Because we haven't told to our fragment that which controller to use, right? So we also explicitly need to tell our fragment that you need to use this main page dot controller dot js in order to call any method, right? So for that, what I have to do, I have to add one more property, controller dot this. So what is controller? A controller is a property, and after that I've passed this. So what I'm saying to this fragment, that if you want that any method, suppose any button, if they want to use the if they want to call any functions, okay, so for that we need controller.js file, right? Because that controller.js js, it is a place where you will call this method, right? But a fragment is not part of our view, but it would be part of view when it from where it can be invoked. So if I want to tell that button that use the main page.controller.js file in order to load, in order to call the function, so for that I have to pass controller colon this. Okay, so this is nothing but I'm saying that I'm saying that to fragment that use this controller, okay, main page.controller, if you want to call any functions. Okay, if because this button, it is a control inside the dialog, inside the fragment, and I cannot simply that button control cannot simply use this main page dot controller, because the fragment, whatever the controls I've defined in the fragment, that are not part of view. So that's why if I want to tell that fragment to use the main page dot controller, so that's why I pass the property as controller this. So once I pass this property controller dot this, so the button will use this main page dot controller file, and I'll, so that I can I think I've already defined on close. Okay, so what I'll do, so I think our we have already written the code for closing the dialog. Next thing, I'll reload this application. Okay, for closing the dialog, let me check once. So if I press open, I can see our dialog is open. So what if I want to close? So we need to check, right, whether our dialog is able to close or not. Once I click on close, so now I can see I'm able to close the dialog. Why? Because we have added this line of code, controller colon this. Okay, that's why we said that fragment that use this controller if you want to call, if your control want to call any methods. Okay, so this is the generic, this is the basic concept related to the fragments in SAP UI5. Yes, Sanjeev, you can ask me now questions.
Yeah, what I understood that actually fragment will design it is in the modal box, and which will be maybe repetitively used in the maybe in one page, two page, which will be repeatedly used, and other things like syntax, all these things I'm not getting.
Yeah, you need to practice this syntax, Sanjeev. So that is one thing, because see, as soon as we move further, that would be a lot of the critical syntax, the complex code. Then this is just the basic. It's more deeper than this.
Mm,
That's why I'm saying you need to practice. You need to check once how to get the ID. After that, what are the methods for the different controls? That is also you need to check. You if you will be not practicing anything, then you will not remember anything. Okay, that would be very hard for you to understand. And this is the generic
okay,
syntax that need to be, there is nothing to understand. This is the syntax you need to follow.
that means always when a fragment is used, this syntax will be used.
Yes, yes, every time if you want to load the fragment, this syntax always would be used. There is nothing change in this. That's why
Okay,
I'm saying you need a practice. You need to understand this code. That's why
okay.
next time again you will again if you want to, so not so keep in one thing in mind, that never think that a fragment always it can be reused. Okay, that can also be possible that only you want to use one time, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
hmm,
Okay.
never compare it with that reusable one.
Mm.
Sometimes we just need it for once, right?
Yeah, yeah. That means for modal box, we will create a fragment.
Model
Not
box
the.
also normally in generic information, if you want to display a generic hard coded information,
Mm.
that can also be displayed with the help of this fragment.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so any questions in this you want to ask? uh,
No, actually, the syntax, yeah, don't
yeah,
understand
what you need to
properly.
do, I'll
Mm.
share this recorded video. Okay, go through it once and try to create one fragment. Okay, by creating
Mm.
one fragment file and
Mm.
use one dialog inside that and try to open in the view. That one
Mm.
assignment you can do. Okay,
Okay.
simply, so this video will help you. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
for
Mm.
no one and every each and every sentence, every statement I've explained in this video, so you
Yeah,
can go
yeah,
through it once.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so should I
Okay.
move further or
No, no, let's stop here.
okay, okay, okay.
Okay.
Okay, then Sanjeev, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
And
yeah,
please go through it once, huh? At
yeah.
least if you get a chance to see this to check this code in the morning, that would be helpful for you. At least for
Okay.
1 hour, I would appreciate that if you go through it once.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay
Okay.
then Sanjeev, I'll
Okay.
share the recorded
Yeah.
training videos. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you then.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.